What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer, continuing my excursion into the Spellbook engine. So I played tunes, and tunes are bad, basically. I mean, not basically, they are bad. So I thought, what if I played this in a good deck? And I know, like Runick, I talked about that, is already really popular. But what if you actually played it in a deck that was like half decent? We'll see what happens. So right now, you really can't even tell, as far as like anybody can tell. This is probably just a regular spellbook deck. Interestingly enough, Droll and Lockbird is a wind spellcaster, so it kind of works out. So I can use Spellbook of Knowledge, sending my Wisdom, and we'll see what I draw into. I draw into a Spellbook of Secrets and an Ash Blossom and Joyous Ring. So not much, but I do get a spell counter. I can activate Spellbook of Secrets, not to grab Blue Boy, but to grab Spellbook of Fate, which you may think like, okay, what is happening? Well, here's something. Again, this is a spellcaster monster. Let's take a look at Spellbook of Knowledge. You can send to the graveyard either one spellcaster monster you control or one other spellbook card from your hand or face up field. And if you do, draw 2 cards. So it's only a hard once per turn. But there is a way to get around hard once per turns in this deck. It is Spellbook of the Master. So all you have to do is reveal. You have to control a spellcaster, and then you reveal a spellbook in your hand. And then you get the copy effect of a spellbook in your graveyard. So I can just normal summon Droll and Lockbird, and let's see what happens. So I am going to be able to draw a couple cards, and what do you know? I draw into Nadir Servant. So now my spell counters are starting to add up here. I'm now up to 4, and I'm going to go into Dogmatika. So this isn't too surprising. Like, Dogmatika is pretty popular, but you'll see what happens pretty soon here. So I'm going to go ahead. I like to send Ferjit because what happens is I can send a I set myself up later at the very least. I have Shureg in my extra deck. So if you send Shureg, you'll have 1 banished beast monster. It's like to add DD Crow to your hand. I'm sure I showed that at some point. But I do have Spellbook of Fate, Super Poly if they get over it. Ash Blossom in my hand. Wind Pegasus is an interruption. And let's take a look here. Actually, you got to be careful about the way that you resolve this. So I actually resolved it correctly on here. So what you need to do is Spellbook of Judgment, Chainlink 1, and then you need to do Dogmatika, Titanclad next. That way you can, because this doesn't let anybody special summon, so you have to special summon this first and then go for Jowgen, which I think I ended up on the right hand side. You can see when I declared my effects, I did that right. I just resolved it backwards. But I mean, this is a pretty half decent setup, I would say. So I get to copy an effect, right? So it could be Spellbook of Judgment, probably not though. So more than likely it's going to be Spellbook of Wisdom. It could be like one of the things that I copy. Also, like Spellbook of Fate's going to be in the graveyard. So basically I have 2 copies of Spellbook of Fate, which is really cool because these are hard ones per turn. And, with this card, they're just not. So I'm still messing around with the Spellbook engine a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to keep Spellbook of Power in there. But Spellbook of Fate is like an insane card. It is smashers, but good. And then I've talked about this, and then this is literally just this is Pot of Greed in the deck, and you'll see why with one of my next engine cards, and that is, of course, obviously, Magical Meltdown. I'm mostly showing off, combos that have Spellbook of Judgment, if not all of them, because otherwise you're doing regular Invoked Dogmatika stuff, but obviously there's just a lot of spell cards that you're going to use in this deck. And here's how this card is actually Pot of Greed. So here goes 1 spell counter. I keep this on the field just so it's easier to see how many spell counters you have. I'd probably do this in real life too, or if not, just put like a piece of dice in my graveyard. But I mean, this hand is just absolutely insane. So I get to search an interruption, and give myself a spell counter, and then here we go. Yes, this is a spellcaster monster. So, like in the literal sense, this is Pot of Greed because it makes no difference whether or not this is on the field or not. So when you get to activate 2 cards, you're not minusing at all. You're actually just getting 2 free cards, and I draw into Forbidden Droplet. So I draw into an interruption, which is obviously this card is like very, very good. The other thing that I'm going to play in real life, because I don't have droplets, I'm probably going to buy a playset soon now that it's like $75 for a playset. But this can be replaced with Book of Moon. Kind of, obviously this card is better, but if you want a budget version, the real reason you run Forbidden Droplets, right, is your opponent's probably going to normal summon something to get over Jowgen. If you have Forbidden Droplets, their attack probably isn't going to be enough to get over Jowgen. But Book of Moon effectively does the same thing, right? Their opponent normal summons, you just flip it face down, so they can't attack over it. So in that case, it can be better because you're not minusing anything. But, you can send like Magical Meltdown or whatever off of Forbidden Droplets. It's not like you're really going to waste anything. But yeah, I thought that was worth noting. So then, obviously, I can just, banish those two. Go into Makaba, activate Invocation, add that back to my hand. Set 2, right? Set 2 interruptions that help support Jowgen. And then during the end phase, I can go ahead and add a bunch of cards to my hand. So I'm going to get a Spellbook of Fate. Like during my opponent's turn, I get an extra copy of it, and I also get Spellbook of Knowledge. Which, basically, this is everything. This card is actually, like, really good. It's not really great to see in your opening outside of the one time you saw it in my hand. Most of the time it's not, but you definitely want 2 copies. Like, the follow-up's just too good. And this is, this is just such a good setup, you know what I mean? Like, your opponent's not getting over Jowgen. Spellbook of Wisdom protects you around Dark Ruler no more. That's a pretty fun one. Okay. So we'll just keep going here. This one looks like very similar, but this is like the ultimate scenario, of course. Nadir Servant just came off the ban list to 3. It was at 2. So that helps a lot. Also, this card works great with Jowgen. I think you're actually going to see that in this duel. So I can go ahead and search Spellbook of Judgment and just start going crazy, crazy, crazy. So this hand's already insane. Like, having Forbidden Droplets also, like, pretty good, too. Like, for going second, obviously. And then I do draw into Jowgen, which you think, like, oh, like, this has to summon from the deck. That's very bad. But, I can go into Makaba here. And then once I activate Nadir Servant, I can just spend Tri-Brigade Fairjeet to draw a card, search, which is insane. And I can just put back Jowgen to the bottom of the deck. And I draw into Super Poly. I know you can't use Super Poly with Jowgen, but if your opponent can't get over Jowgen, you win anyways. So if they're able to, like, negate it for some reason, like, then you just have insane, like, other interruptions. Most of the time, your opponent's also going to have to waste their normal summon. So this setup is very good. So, during the end phase, summon Jowgen, search 3, Spellbook of Fate. It's almost always going to be there. Master is like the pivot point for everything, and then I can just get Pot of Greed. Because the great thing is, like, if your opponent just, like, passes and they're, like, hoping to get the out for the next turn, you just use Spellbook of Knowledge to get this off of the field. You have your follow-up with Invocation. Like, you're just going to go for a game, like, 100% of the time. And again, if your opponent has, like, Imperm or something for Jowgen or whatever, like, Dark Ruler, Forbidden Droplets, well, now you have Super Poly, Forbidden Droplets, Dogmatika Punishment, Droll and Lockbird, and like a negate, like a spell negate. I should have added Invocation to my hand, so I should have a monster negate as well. And I already have this follow-up too. So the deck is, like, obviously half decent. Like, this probably isn't the best going second deck. So I kind of have been theory crafting, what if you, like, side in, like, even, like, Fusion Destiny or something. Because Fusion Destiny and the Spellbook engine are, like, geometrically opposed to each other. Because if you activate, you can't special summon for the rest of the turn, so Jowgen can't come out. So you, like, just literally can't play them together. This hand looks wildly similar, so just again showing off, I'll go, like, pretty quick over this one. Spellbook, I can activate Magical Meltdown. These 2 cards just pair super well because you get an extra spell counter. And then this goes to the graveyard, draw 2 cards. It's punishment, which is always nice. So you're either gonna have, like, Book of Moon or punishment, Spellbook of Fate, the whole 9 yards. And I think this one looks pretty similar, so we'll just go over to the next one. And again, like, this card, I'll show this one because just to show how crazy this card is, right? You're plussing off the search, and then now you just get to draw 2 cards. So seeing what you draw into, Spellbook of Secrets. So obviously you're not always going to have, Spellbook of Judgment. And hopefully these last few replays kind of show that off. Like, this isn't the greatest end board in the world, but at the same time, like, I have Invocation access, Droll and Lockbird, Ghost Mourner, Spellbook of Fate that I can use for Book of Moon. That's why this card's so good. I get to Book of Moon my opponent plus Forbidden Droplets. Like, the deck can obviously still do things. You don't only have to search Spellbook of Judgment. Or honestly, if you do, it's not a bad card because during your opponent's turn, they activate a spell, you chain Spellbook. So you're at least getting a +1 off of it. And technically, you get to summon Droll and Lockbird from the deck. As long as your opponent activates 1 spell, you can summon this, which is great because it's not really something you want to top deck. Plus, you get to search an interruption. That's assuming your opponent only does 1 spell card for the entire turn, right? This counts all spell cards between you and your opponent. That's what makes this engine, like, so good. Let's take a look at what I get here. I'll go ahead and hit play. Now, dear servant can go ahead and probably send Tri-Brigade to the graveyard. That's correct. And then I get to draw one card, see what I get off the top. It is a Spellbook of Judgment, so again, kind of using it as an interruption. And when you spend Shurag, after you banish the Fairjeet, you get to search DD Crow. So just another form of interruption there. And Titanclad can go ahead and search me Ecclesia. So, not Ecclesia, Fleur-de-Lis. So again, like, I have Super Poly, Dogmatika, Punishment, Ash Blossom, DD Crow, Fleur. Which a great thing is, like Super Poly is, like, Super Poly would be good for Garua, but if your opponent has Dark Ruler or Forbidden, like, those cards obviously aren't doing anything off rip. So you just have a lot of interruption from different places. So, like, one form of going second card is not enough to stop you. Like, if you're playing against, you know, Tearlament, this is actually pretty good, especially with Spellbook of Judgment. Your opponent activates the you know, the field spell, you chain. That could be a pretty decent thing to do. And okay, and then this is just Pot of Greed. Or again, I can just use that interruption. Maybe it would have been better to search the one that lets you draw two, like considering my hand, but this is actually like half good interruption anyways. So I can get, you know, Maximus, I can banish. This is like old school. So lots of interruption here. And this has nothing to do, you know, with this engine technically, other than kind of being interruption during my opponent's turn. So I do get a Wind Pegasus, which is always great. This card is super underrated. It does so much for the deck. I can do this during my opponent's turn. Ash, Droll, and another interruption there. So lots of things I can do. Probably enough to hold me off. And if my opponent activates 3 spells during the turn, even if it's Dark Ruler and Forbidden, you know, I get advantage off of it. So the most powerful going second cards are good for me in a sense. If my opponent had Lightning Storm, imagine your opponent starts off with Lightning Storm, calling back row, thinking this is punishment. Whew. That'd be good. That'd be very good. So that is my concept. I'm going to be showing a lot of gameplay videos for it. I'm actually going to be playing this in real life. So I might do kind of like a live duel with it, showcasing the goo. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. Other than that, that's going to do it for today's video, and I'll see you guys next time.